Well, the second Republican debate took place yesterday at the Reagan Library. I actually have not been there in about 9 years, almost 10 years, because I remember it was February 2014, um, which was the year before they had the 2015 debate there that had Trump with about 8 or 9 other people, and it was like 3 hours long. So, if I could use one word to describe how the debate went, I would say filler. Um, when the first debate happened, I thought it was going to move the needle for some of the candidates. A lot of voters may not have known who they were, may not have heard them speak, etc. And it did that for Haley. But in this case, I can't see anyone who really benefited from last night. Um, I mean, even a person like Ramaswamy, who received a big boost from the first debate, probably benefit the most of anyone besides Haley. He got one memorable moment where he was talking about how he wants to get people from differing beliefs and he's going to listen to them if he becomes president, and how there are some people who would see him as a know-it-all, and it was this really human moment for a person whose campaign is like mostly just repeating talking points and speaking uh, over people and claiming everything that's not in his favor is fake news. But besides that moment, he didn't really get a chance to shine. He sort of faded into the background when he and Haley were not at each other's throats, and we'll get into that later on. Um, if anyone's got an improved performance, it probably would be Burgum and Scott. Scott more so because at the first debate, I have to remind myself what he even said. I know there was one scene where he mentioned being a Southerner and how they talk slow, which I'm not making one comment on the other. I personally don't believe that, but hey, it is what it is. At least this time around, I can remember his lines. He really disgusted me with his gross mischaracterization of the unions as wanting more hours for less work, wanting more pay for less hours, wanting more days off for less work. Just it's a really nasty, and I feel very poorly and very badly for any blue collar person that would support him, because it is utter contempt for the people who are trying to give more benefits for those who are already working to their to the sweat of their brow. Um, so he had that goofy comment. He had the line that all the conservatives were cheering over, which was that black survive. And this is really a disgusting line, that black survived slavery, but they could barely survive the Great Society of LBJ. And I thought about Elder for a second, because that's one of Elder's talking points too. And I said, so that's it. That's why Elder didn't make the debate stage, because his quota of being the black conservative who trashes things that assisted black people was already taken by Scott. Um, and Scott would be a much more, I'd say, he would have better optics as someone that pushes that BS, because he's a senator and someone who's been successful in a career manner in a way that very few African Americans have been. So to have him saying that over a radio commentator was preferable. Even if it was just the same old tie. But like, here's my thing: even if you're on that, part of that branch that believes welfare programs destroyed families, even though, as we've stated before, most people on welfare are white. Most white kids are born in wedlock. So you could point to other factors like mass incarceration and the three strikes rule, and just other things that would cause blacks to not be around their children. But I digress. Even if you're someone that believes in that, you're really going to not see where it's offensive to say, oh yes, welfare programs were worse for blacks than slavery, and lynchings. It's just I don't. That's why I said these people, and they're the types of things they can say without being challenged or having it contested by the moderators, who are already Republican light anyway, via Fox News, is just sad. Burgum was okay. I don't see him moving up though, and I just know that much of his rhetoric was, "Oh, we already did that in my state." Pence probably was the worst, He was directly asked about repealing Obamacare, and he like shifted to talking about Trump and just others. Just didn't answer the question, which um, was really humorous because he was someone who, when he was in Congress, this is during the Tea Party movement, a lot of those people were elected off the promise of, we want to get rid of the ACA. Oh my God, socialist takeover of medicine, right? This is the type of rhetoric they would use. So to have a guy who was part of that era now being reluctant to say, if I become president, I'm going to try to repeal this law that was very instrumental to the group of people who, won the House, one of the biggest landslides for Republicans ever in 2010. It just, I thought was really humorous. And it tells you that a lot of the, I think a lot of Americans, even the ones that aren't like totally left leaning, they just can't see a good argument for taking away people's healthcare. Like basically, even if they don't really like the Democrats that much, they're still like, you guys really are going to get rid of, are going to take people off of medicine and say you're for working people and families and the forgotten man. Are you kidding me? So that's why he probably didn't want to answer it, because it's becoming more apparent just how unpopular that proposal and that position is. But it in this debate, he really did kind of head into the sidelines, which is even more funny when you consider that he's, out of anyone, he's probably the biggest, most diehard Reagan bootlicker. So to have him just completely fade away on Reagan's home turf, like in this building that was dedicated to him, I think was hilarious. It was a nice visual irony for those that could look at it and see what was so funny about it. But yeah, he vanished. He's probably not going to move up at all. I wouldn't even. Apparently, he hasn't even qualified for the third debate yet. Um, like I said, I'm more interested in his campaign for the fact that it exists than for me thinking he had any chance of actually being able to win. But now we move over to DeSantis, who I'll also say probably was better. Although when Haley called him out for fracking, he did the same thing that Ramaswamy does, which is, that's not true, that's a lie, that's not true, that's a lie. Because anytime you call these people out for doing something that doesn't go along with, like, at least when, and we're gonna get into this later, but with Haley, at least when she went back with Scott about the State Department uh, things that were inside the building, the way the building looked or whatever. At least with that, she tried to say, "Hey, this was there before I got there. Did you send them back?" That at least it wasn't like a complete omission of reality. But DeSantis was like, "I didn't frack," which was not true. So his performance, I'd say, was better than the first night, because he did appear more assertive, but not first night, the first debate. But I still don't think it's going to really move the needle. I think he's going to keep plummeting. He's either going to keep plummeting or he's going to stay at like a barely over double digits. Um, you're not really going to see him go too much. Now, Christie was really funny as a person to watch, because you have this guy who his main sticking point is, I'm going to blow up Trump's chance to get a nomination. I'm going to be the one who says the aggressive things, who goes after him in ways that his opponents won't. And unfortunately, I just don't think much of his rhetoric landed here. He had this line about like toward the end of how, well, I was it toward the end of how Trump is going to, instead of Donald Trump, they're calling him Donald Duck for all the times that he just ducks the debates. And I like the substance of what he was saying, but the one liner just, I just kind of, it felt more goofy than anything else. He's someone who's memorable for the sake of doing something the other candidates won't do, but it just wasn't done enough to really, in my view, justify saying that he had a successful night. Like he's been falling in New Hampshire, and I don't think this is going to flip him anymore or get him any further along the line. Which is unfortunate, because I do want to see him stay in this race, at least for, I was really hoping Trump would attend some of these debates. Maybe the third time will be the charm. I'm not going to hold my breath, but it really does look like we're going to just keep being stuck with this stagnant group of 8, or now 7, that are all polling within 2-3% of each other, but can't get up any further at all, because the rest of the electorate is all mesmerized by Trump in that primary. And now we'll get to Haley, the winner, as many different sources have stated. like I said, she had the biggest boost out of anybody after the first debate, and I think it's probably going to be the case again here. It won't be by as much, I don't think so, because all these other people in the race. But she actually got off some memorable lines. I mean, her line, like, so Fox, when they were covering this, was like, no one in this debate had a line that was as memorable as Reagan saying, "I will not exploit my opponent's youth and inexperience against Mondale." But honestly, the line that she said to Ramaswamy about every time I hear you, I feel a little bit dumber. I want to like clip that and use that for things from now on because it stood out to me that really did because it's such an extended level. Like, listen, I'm not a Ramaswamy fan. I've talked before about how multiple things he said I found goofy. The wanting to raise the voting age to 25, um, for example, or this trying to say that Ayanna Presley was part of the modern case. Just goofy, weird stuff that he says. I don't approve of. But I would never say that every time I hear him speak, I feel a little bit dumb. Like you have to really despise that man, or even just like someone else to say that about them. You have to really hate that person to say, or and like I get it, she's running against him, but that's a level of vitriol that I don't even think Trump would say that about someone like, or maybe he has, but it's extremely nasty. But you know what? It's memorable. It landed when she was about to be confronted by Tim Scott, and she said, "Bring it, Tim." Like just ready to have him go after her. I guess the fact that she called out Ramaswamy for talking about how dangerous China is, but then getting on TikTok, which is notably affiliated with China. Um, she was, in my opinion, if anyone on that stage won that wasn't Trump, which is what people are saying, Trump won the debate because he didn't go, but he was still talking. If anyone actually won that was there, it was her. She had the most memorable lines, the most memorable back and forths. Um, just I think even as someone who's not a fan of hers, when I saw the polls that showed that she would beat Biden in a matchup, or like basically, I was put it this way: I think of anyone that was there, I'm most convinced she would have the easiest time messing with Biden in the debate. I think any of them probably could do it because of his cognitive abilities being under question, but I think she would coast to victory the easiest. Just if I'm looking at this in any objective way. So I think she did the best out of anyone there. I think the line of every time I hear you, I feel a little bit dumber. That should be a memorable line that people use and replay for different things from now on. Because it's got there's so much antagonism in that one sentence, and it's like, God, you don't get that kind of just like anger and aggression in primaries. Like, I don't even think if we went through the whole Democratic primary, which was also like the 2021, you wouldn't have heard anything like that said, because at least with those people, they tried to be respectful of each other for the most part. Um, it was this debate was, aside from a few memorable lines, as I said at the start of this, mostly filler because it's not going to move anyone up that much from what I can tell. Trump is still going to stay number one, and unfortunately, because his poll numbers have not sunk, which they should from just the way he's acted, he's probably going to skip the third one in November. And I'm predicting we're probably going to have at least one or two of these people drop out before that point. Um, I don't think it'll be like Haley DeSantis and Ramaswamy are safe, as I think they're going to stay in no matter what, and Christie because he wants to make it to New Hampshire. But um, I would get really concerned if you're a fan of Burgum or Pence about their chances, because Pence actually is like the only one from what I can tell who besides Burgum who hasn't qualified for the donor threshold, which is really funny because it's like you would think if somebody's running for president of a country with 330 million people, you'd be able to get 60,000, 70,000, 80,000 to donate to you, but I guess not. Um, so and I've already just kind of been like, we need to lower this field because we're now only what less than a third of a year away from when voting starts. So I think Haley was the winner. I think if anyone's gonna get a bump from this, it was her. But for the most part, it was a spectacle that was more for entertainment purposes than actually getting the needle moving on anyone that's going. Like I'd be shocked if anyone that was on that stage ends up being the nominee based off of the polling. So, in conclusion, Haley did the best. DeSantis and Ramaswamy, and to a lesser extent Scott, were okay, and and Christie as well. And then Pence and Burgum really were just kind of like whatever. You could cut them out this debate, and you really wouldn't miss much. They're the closest ones I think to exiting this race, which in Pence's case is very unfortunate because I did want to see him debate Trump. It doesn't look like we're going to get that, and that's arguably the greatest tragedy of this primary, other than the fact that most voters want to support somebody with 91 criminal charges. Uh, but yeah, it was an overhyped event. It was entertaining, but certainly it wasn't what it should have been in the sense that because Trump keeps ducking and a lot of these people get into these back and forths where you sometimes can't even tell who's saying what. It just didn't go as well as or it didn't go as far in changing things as it should have.